After the congestion control overview, you know what you're getting into. We are ready to attack the problem. So this video shows how TCP handles congestion control. So there is this seminal paper on this topic. The slides are derived from this paper. It's a good read. Check it out. First, let's see how much you remember. So here is a quick recap of what has transpired so far. TCP is based on the sliding window protocol. So we need to estimate the window size. And if we underestimate this window size, it results in underutilization of the available bandwidth. On the contrary, if you overestimate this is going to push the network into congestion. And to make matters worse, this W is bound to vary with time as new connections pop up, old connections close. So congestion control is all about preventing these sources from sending too much data too fast and thereby congesting the network. The basic idea is as follows, which is the same as the sliding window protocol idea, is where we view the network as a pipe. In this case, we are going to estimate the bandwidth delay product, which is the capacity of the pipe dynamically. For this, we will use this variable congestion window. And then as acknowledgements come, we use the self-clocking property to pump more data into the network. I also mentioned the 3 steps to take. One is getting to equilibrium. This is filling up the pipe. The other is conservation at equilibrium. That is ensuring that you don't put a new packet until the old packet is removed. The other is adapting to the path. That is keeping track of the changes in the capacity of the pipe. So we will address each in turn in this video. So the first problem is getting to equilibrium. That is filling up the pipe. So for this, what value of the congestion window should we choose initially? The bandwidth delay product that your flow is entitled could vary from 1 packet, 10 packets, 100 packets or 200 packets. You don't really know when you're starting out. So if you're wondering, didn't the self-clocking tell us about the bottleneck bandwidth based on which we can decide this initial window size? Well, that's a chicken and egg problem, because unless you put data into the network, you will not get ACKs and thereby you will not get information about the bottleneck bandwidth. And without this bottleneck information, how do you decide to put packets into the network? So if you are like many others, your instinct is to do a binary search. So for example, if the bandwidth delay product can range from 1 to 200, you will start with some intermediate value 100. You take feedback from the network and adjust this value to the right value. And there is an underlying greediness here in that you don't want to start with a very low value, because in this case, you know you're going to underutilize the network. So you want to start with a relatively high value. Remember, not just you, everyone is going to do this. That is, start with a relatively high value. What is going to be the problem in this case? Suppose your bandwidth delay product is only 10 and now everyone is going to start with a value of 100. What are you going to do? You're going to push the network into congestion at the very beginning. As I have mentioned earlier, it is very easy to cause traffic jams. It is very easy to drive a network into congestion, but getting out of it is going to take a lot of time. This is definitely not a good practice. Now let me ask this question. What if the networking god were to appear and were to give you the right value of BDP, which let's say in this case is equal to 10? Would you then dump these 10 packets in one go into the network? Do you think it's a good practice? Again, this is also not a good idea. Look at this figure. So these are routers, and these routers are connected by a low bandwidth 1 Mbps link, but the traffic that is feeding into this router is at 10 Mbps. Now look at this flow. This flow is going to dump 10 packets into the network at 10 Mbps. So it is true that this flow is entitled to a bandwidth delay product of 10 packets, but this 10 packets are supposed to be stored along the entire path, because this is dictated by the round trip time as well. And not just you, there are other flows who are also going to dump these 10 packets at a high rate of 10 Mbps. And now if you look at this router, this is only going to drain packets at 1 Mbps. So its incoming rate is going to exceed its outgoing rate, in which case the buffer here is going to overflow, and this will lead to packet loss at the very beginning itself. So this again is not a good idea. So what is the right idea? Start conservatively and slowly fill up the pipe. Don't just dump packets at a very high rate into the network. So originally when TCP was implemented, in fact they didn't realize this problem. They figured out what the bandwidth delay product is and configured the nodes appropriately. But then the network collapsed, and when they debugged, they figured out this is one of the contributing factors. And they came up with this very neat little idea called slow start. So as the name indicates, they start very conservatively with a very small window size of just 1. Let me emphasize a specific point here. One way to look at this variable congestion window is that it captures the number of outstanding data in the network at any given time. That is, these are the packets that the sender has put in the network, and it has no idea about their status. In other words, whether they have been received or not. It could very well happen that these packets have been received by the receiver, but as far as the sender is concerned, they are still there as part of the pipe. Because the pipe's capacity is being dictated by the round trip time, not the one-way delay. Now, having set this CWND equal to 1, what this does is that on each acknowledgement for new data, it is going to increment this CWND by 1. That is, it is making use of the self-clocking mechanism to increase the congestion window. So this is what it boils down to. It starts out with a window size of 1. Thereby it sends the first packet, which I am indicating by D0. So when an acknowledgement for this packet comes indicated by A0, it is going to increase the congestion window by 1. So it became 1 plus 1, that is equal to 2. This indicates that there can be 2 outstanding packets in the network. Currently there are none, thereby it can send 2 packets, that is it will send D1 and D2. So these are the packets that were sent. Now in response to this reception of D1, it is going to send an acknowledgement A1, and because the congestion window is 2, it again incremented by 1 so that it became 3. At this particular point where the congestion window is equal to 3, so what this means is that there can be 3 outstanding packets in the network, but there is already 1 packet which you still don't know. You didn't receive an acknowledgement for D2 yet. So as far as the sender is concerned, D2 is still in the network. Since there can be 3 outstanding, 1 is already outstanding, you can send 2 more. So in response at this particular point, you are going to send D3 and D4. And when this acknowledgement 2 comes, again you are going to increment the congestion window by 1, thereby making it equal to 4, which means there can be 4 outstanding packets. But currently, as far as you know, D3, D4 are still there in the network. You don't know their status. You already know D2 was received because you received an acknowledgement for that. Since DT, 3, 4 are already in the network and you can send 2 more, you send D5 and D6. This D5, D6 are sent as a response to this other acknowledgement. So overall, if you see, you send 4 packets here. And this process is going to repeat as indicated by this figure. I would like you to go through this carefully. So if you notice, the congestion window increase is not really that slow. In fact, it is increasing exponentially. It started out with 1, in one round trip time it doubled, in another round trip time it again doubled, so on. So tell me, how many round trip times will it take to reach a window of size W? So as you can see, every round trip time you are doubling the congestion window. So it started out with 1, it became 2, here it became 4, here it became 8, so on. So it takes log 2W round trip times to get to W. As you can see, this is an exponential increase. It starts out conservatively by setting CW is equal to 1, but the growth is exponential. Suppose you are using the slow start tell me what is the maximum rate at which you are sending data. So if you see this figure, earlier we were dumping data at 10 Mbps when the bottleneck bandwidth is 1 Mbps. Now if you did the slow start, looking at this figure as well as this action, tell me at what maximum rate are you sending data? Well, you're sending data at most twice the bottleneck link on the path, because if you see these acts are being separated by the transmission time as dictated by the bottleneck link, and for every act that you're receiving, you're sending 2 packets. That is, you're sending 2 packets every transmission time dictated by the bottleneck bandwidth, which boils down to that you're sending at twice the bottleneck bandwidth. Suppose your bottleneck bandwidth is 1 Mbps, because you are sending data at twice the bottleneck link, you are sending at a rate of 2 Mbps. So it is inevitable that you are going to overestimate the capacity at some time in the future, thereby causing congestion. Specifying in another way, if we are dealing with a window size and let's say the capacity is 20, you start with 1 window size of 1, you double it, you again double, you double, you double, you double. So this is much more than the optimal window size, and thereby you are going to overestimate the capacity. How to correct this overestimate? We will talk about it when covering adapting to the path.